Hello everyone and welcome to CripChat, your weekly podcast on everything disability. Today I have with me joining me, Nicholas and Hayley. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Oh,
Great to
great.
be here.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having us.
It's such a pleasure having you on the show. Welcome guys. So before we get started, just please tell us a bit about yourself and what you guys do.
Do you want to go first, Nick?
No, you go first. Yeah.
Okay. I'm Hayley Dean. I'm CEO of Melbourne Support Services and also a very excited and inspired partner of Spoonie. And I'll let Nick tell you a little bit more about Spoonie. But my role at Melbourne Support Services, one of the things we're incredibly passionate about, and I love to use the term passionate, because is around ensuring that people can actually access all their human rights. And we feel the right to access intimacy and all things related to intimacy is very rarely discussed in that frame of service delivery. Everyone bangs on about human rights and upholding them, but as soon as you start to talk about relationships, sex, intimacy, everybody ducks for cover. And I wish it was truly ducking for cover in the real sense under the bed sheets, but it's not. And so I think being able to work together with Nick on this opportunity with Spoonie is just fantastic. Over to you, Nick.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Nick. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Spoonie. Spoonie is a social platform for neurodivergent, chronically ill and disabled people to make friends and find support. We're really passionate about solving the problem of social isolation for the community. As Hayley said, there's such a great demand for contact of all kinds, for intimacy, for relationship. We at the moment we have about 25,000 users, and we're super excited to be partnering with Melba to continue to grow the platform this year and beyond. And yeah, very grateful to be here as well. So thank you for having us.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you for the lovely introduction, Hayley and Nick. Let's get into discussion. Sounds like an interesting app. Can't wait to dive into it. But first, Hayley, we'll start with you. Discuss the common misconception and stereotypes that people with disability face in the dating world.
Yeah, it's really, I also feel very conscious as a person who doesn't necessarily identify as an individual with a disability. So I always sort of give a disclaimer because I don't like talking on behalf of others. But what I can say is what people are telling us and what our focus groups and around those whole misconceptions. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is being treated as a child and being seen as a perennial child, and therefore you don't have the right to an adult style relationship. And even quite recently, I was taken back when somebody turned around and said, "Oh, but they only have a mental age of," and it sort of hits you in the guts. Yeah, it's like, are you for real? Are we still talking in those terms? So we're still facing these real misconceptions. And we also find, especially working with family members, as fantastic as families are, often that's where it lies. And people will say to us, I didn't get to do the things that other kids got to do. I didn't get to push the boundaries. I didn't get to climb out the window and stay out really late and get drunk and do drugs or do whatever other people are doing, because I just didn't get that opportunity. So I didn't really get to push the boundary with mum and dad or with my brothers and sisters for them to see that actually, I'm like anybody else. I want a relationship. I want connectivity. I want connectedness. I want intimacy. And it'll look very different for me as it will for anybody else. So I guess there's that. And then there's the issue of safety. And again, someone said to me quite recently, a person with a disability, how do you stop people who fetishize people with a disability? And that for me was quite confronting. I hadn't even really thought about that until she raised it. So all those issues of being able to keep safe, feeling comfortable around being able to date. And I think the other piece is what we believe is that more informed people are, the more safe they're going to be. And often people run from that, want you to be experiencing things like sexuality, disability or disabled folk. So again, it's just about getting rid of all those ridiculous thoughts and going, you know, we're all people, we're all humans, and we have the right to intimacy and connection. So yeah, it's a big hill to climb, I reckon.
Yeah, sure is interesting. Thank you for that, Hayley. How about you, Nick?
Yeah, very similar to what Hayley just said. I think the biggest misconception that I've found in my experience in the work that I've done is just that disabled people is the idea that disabled people don't want to access the full breadth of the human experience, and it's everything from relationships, having a job, to living a full and happy and independent. I think there's this idea that disabled people or people with disability can't contribute to the economy. They can't enter into a relationship of their own volition and even have children. And I think all of that, it comes from essentially from myths and from misconceptions that people with very little contact with this community have formed. And I think they're dangerous misconceptions because they really limit people, they limit this community, and they really put you in a box. And the biggest misconception is that people in this community are less than, and it's just not true. Disabled people are just they get excited about the same things that other people get excited about. They fall in love. They want to go on dates. They want to have one night stands. They want to fall in and out of love. They want to have a best friend. They want to have a group of friends. They want to have a crew. They want everything just as much as everyone else.
Right, yeah, true, exactly. And yeah, people just really have the right to love, to be loved, and to also, yeah, find love. There's nothing wrong with that.
So,
so explore how these perceptions can impact self-esteem and daily experiences. We'll go over to you, Nick.
It's a good question. I think that I think the biggest risk I see is that those myths that we just talked about, they can become internalized by people with disabilities. And what I mean by that is, if you get told constantly that you're not capable of being in a relationship, or you're not capable of being independent, the flip side to that is that some people can start to believe that, and it's really self perpetuating, and it can be really damaging, and it can really impact people's self-esteem, and it's as I said, it's just not true. And I think what I want for Spoonie is I want Spoonie to be an empowering experience for this community, and I want people to feel self-empowered, and for people to know that they can they can make friends, and they can find people who understand them, and they can find people who to go on dates with as well, and they can fall in love. And these myths aren't that they're not it's not a fait accompli. It's not something that we have to lean into.
Yeah, interesting point. Thanks, Nick. Hayley, do you have anything you want to add?
I think Nick put it beautifully. I guess the only thing I would add is the impact on self-esteem, not just about the perception, but just the lack of even being able to access any form of intimacy in any way. And so if you put both together, how people are perceived and one's self-esteem, and then also just not the opportunity to even have touch in your life. For example, I know there's plenty of people that have said to me the only touch they have is when their support worker is providing support, which just is, it begs belief in terms of that's the only physical touch and what that does to one's self-esteem as well. So together with what Nick said, it's not just about the myths, it's in the outcome of how that plays out as well.
Okay, so address physical and digital accessibility challenges in traditional dating environments and platforms. Nick, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. What the mainstream platforms, are essentially not fit for purpose in many ways. And I think when we think about designing with access as a core value and as a core as a core feature of a platform, you really have to reimagine what these platforms look like. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity, and it's something that we've really embraced with Spoonie. We're building what we think is the first social platform built with accessibility at its core. And what happens so often with these platforms is that accessibility is an afterthought. So they've already built the platform, and then they realize, we have to, for compliance reasons, we have to tick these boxes and make it accessible. And what we found is that they're often not accessible. And another big part of accessibility is to do with safety. And a lot of these mainstream platforms, they're just not safe spaces for neurodivergent, chronically ill, and disabled people to be vulnerable and to share things about their health and disability. They're full of stigma, judgment, and misinformation, and that makes them really inaccessible. So what we've tried to do with Spoonie is to build a safe space where people can actually just be their authentic selves. It's been enormously powerful to see people feel like they can unmask and just be themselves on our platform.
Hayley, do you have anything you want to add?
Again, Nick just puts it so beautifully, the combination of the actual, what you would see as the environmental accessibility, the physicality of the accessibility is one thing, but you cannot underestimate that power, that negative power of not feeling like you're in a safe space. We all want to be our authentic selves. So I guess I'm just reiterating what Nick's saying, which is why we were so delighted to be able to work together with Nick, especially because of that really core understanding and what the outcome for people was going to be. I've also heard a lot, I just want to mix with my tribe, man. I just want to be with my crew. Stop making me go out to these other nightclubs. I just want my crew. And, you think about who your own crew is and why you've got your own tribe. It's because you've got so much in common, or you feel authentically safe to be who you are. And I think Spoonie has just really nailed it in terms of being able to provide that safe space. Again, not just for the disabled, but chronically ill and neurodivergent as well.
Interesting point. That's true. True. I guess people want to get out of that, comfort zone and explore many options that are out there. That's a good point you both brought up. Thank you both. And I do apologize for the IT issue. But anyway, highlight the lack of inclusive features in mainstream dating apps. Hayley, we'll go over to you.
Well, you know what? I'm actually gonna because I am not the app expert, so
No worries.
I'm gonna
Over to
handle
you,
this.
Nick.
But I will say, just from our perspective, one of the real issues around inclusivity is people feeling it's the safety piece. And I'll then hand across to Nick because just technology. I'm one of those individuals that feels good, it sounds good, it is good. Whereas I know Nick, you'll be able to give that wonderful technical background.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you, Hayley.
Thanks, Hayley.
Over to you, Nick.
I think the biggest one that we've found is the safety. So it's what I was just talking about before. Is that often when disabled people use like Tinder or Bumble, they'll often hide the fact that they're disabled, and they'll leave it off their profile. They won't mention it. If they're fortunate enough to match with someone, they won't mention it until maybe just before they go on a date with someone. And then we've seen people get unmatched when they actually disclose that, and that's terrible. Like it's really tragic, and it's awful, and it's ableist, and that is the biggest barrier we found with the mainstream dating and social and friendship apps. It's just not the right. You're not connecting with the right people. Then there are obviously like a host of technical things as well. Things like making sure that the app is compatible with a screen reader, making sure that it's compatible with for people that have poor motor control or who have cognitive challenges. Some people need low stimulation environments. Some people need high stimulation environments. The breadth of access needs in the community is huge. So what we've tried to do, instead of just sort of choosing a one size fits all approach, which is what most of the mainstream apps do, we have tried to give people as much flexibility and control and customization as possible within the app, because we want to cater for everybody. So no matter what your disability or no matter what your access needs are, we want you to be able to use Spoonie, because it is a welcome place for everybody with a disability.
Yeah, and I think it's good that you said that, Nick, because as a person with a disability myself, whenever I do use these dating apps and whenever I do connect with someone, I never disclose, my disability. And when we get like closer and closer to each other, and we get that connection, I'm always, uncomfortable with not being able to disclose, my disability. And I always ask myself, when is the right time
Mm.
to disclose my disability? Or should I disclose it? So it's good that you mentioned that. Thank you very much for that, Nick. And we'll move on to the next question. Discuss the heightened vulnerability to exploitation or misunderstanding in dating context. Over to you, Nick.
That's a good question. I have to think about this one for a second.
Nick, do you want me to jump in on this one? Because we've done a little bit of work on this.
I think you might have.
If you're comfortable, Nick and I are happy to play the tag team.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hayley. You saved me.
Thank you, Hayley. Go
Yeah, I think this comes back to the myths that we talked about earlier. There is a heightened vulnerability to exploitation, but whose is the heightened vulnerability? Is it the family member that again is concerned about their loved one who is now an adult, but maybe they still see as that perennial child? there is a genuine heightened vulnerability because we know the levels of abuse, as in sexual abuse and physical abuse for people with a disability, especially women with a disability, is so much higher than the general female population. And so therefore there is a reason for that heightened vulnerability to exploitation. But I think in saying that, I would also say some of it's not necessarily a misunderstanding, but I think one of the things that we'd also want to get across is power is in information. And the more information and the more educated someone is, whether it's a female that may be feeling vulnerable because I may have, I don't, but if I had a physical disability or an intellectual disability, I may feel I'm more vulnerable to be abused. But if I've got information, I know how to say no. I know how to be really clear about what I want and what I don't want and feel empowered and confident to do that. I think that's where we need to be. And sadly, even that information and learning often gets stifled because of all those other myths that we talked about earlier. So I think there is a potential exploitation in that sense, but I think it's more so with other apps whereby I know there's people that we support that keep it secret that they're using a dating app because they want relationship, but they're scared about what people are going to say. And therefore the vulnerability becomes even more because then they may be meeting someone that nobody knows where they are or where they're meeting. They don't have their backup, you know. Often we know we're dating as a female. If you're going to meet someone you've not met before, you might have a backup plan and your mate you're going to call. So there's all those different factors that come into play. But I guess the big picture for me here is education, having and being informed. And then you can reduce that level of vulnerability to exploitation. Is that sort of what you wanted to say, Nick?
You took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you, Hayley.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. It's a really tricky one.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you for that, Hayley and Nick. Awesome, interesting. So moving over to you, Nick. I emphasize the need for safe spaces where individuals can connect authentically.
Yeah, absolutely. With what I discovered in my own personal experience, and then was able to validate, through working with the community, is that existing online spaces aren't safe spaces for this community to be vulnerable about their health and to be authentic. Those platforms are rife with judgment and stigma and misinformation, and it's only getting worse. You might have seen a lot of things in the news over the past few weeks about the mainstream social apps. They've really just vacated the space when it comes to a duty of care, when it comes to moral leadership. Meta has slashed its moderation teams. We've just seen TikTok last night announce that they've cut most of their safety and moderation teams as well. So it's really the Wild West out there, and people's the worst of humanity comes out as well. But also the flip side is that when we can create safe spaces that are our own, the best of humanity also comes out. And I think that's what we've seen with Spoonie. It's just been an enormously empowering platform for the people that are on there so far, just to know that they're in a safe space. And it's transformative. It's completely changed the way that people can express themselves and the kinds of connections that they can make, right? Like suddenly people are just free to be themselves, and it's enormously powerful to unmask, as we all know. And everyone in this community knows what it's like to mask and to not have to do that. And to do that every day is exhausting. So to be able to actually not do that and to just show up and just be yourself is just, it's the best feeling in the world.
It sure is. Not. Thank you for that, Nick. Hayley, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think Nick covered it all. I think it is pretty scary right now where we're seeing the world leading to. So having that, it's so important to be able to have that safe space to be able to be your authentic self. So beautifully put, Nick.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Nick. I'm going to yeah, can explore the topic of disclosing a disability in dating profiles and also conversations.
Yeah, I think actually you both covered it off beautifully before around when do you actually disclose? And I think one of the sad parts that we've often heard is just the fact that I have to consider, not me, but a person has to consider when to disclose is already putting oneself in this really negative view. You're already putting, oneself at this I'm trying to find the right words because it's really, and it's such an emotive thing here, like to actually have to think through when do I disclose my full authentic self. It's just horrendous to think that one needs to hold back. And I think that in itself, the fact to have a space where you can just be who you are is just so powerful, and not having to really explain or justify or defend. I think we all get sick and tired of if you've experienced being a minority or being discriminated against, is that's what you constantly feel. And then it becomes almost amplified, I think, in the dating world, because then you've got all those other factors of what I look like. Will I be perfect? All those questions that you ask of yourself. So I think it's just the fact of Spoonie where you don't even have to think about the disclosing, where you don't have to think about the challenge of that conversation, the ability to be who you are, because we know those mainstream apps absolutely not. And as Nick so rightly put, what we're seeing places like TikTok also announcing last night that they're all going to cut out anything to do with safety or moderation. I think it's more than the Wild West. It's pretty scary stuff. So having that safe space like Spoonie is so important.
Yeah, it sure is. No, it's awesome that there are apps like this out there. Like I say, for people with disability to be involved in the dating world, I think it's important. So thank you, Hayley. Thank you, Nick, once again. So did we go over to you, Nick?
For the previous question?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll just add quickly that we've gone even further than just like encourage allowing creating a space for people to disclose their disability. We really encourage it on Spoonie. So when you set up a profile on Spoonie, you can choose to disclose if you're neurodivergent, chronically ill, and disabled, or you can also tick that you're an ally, or you can choose not to. But most people do, and after that, you can even select exactly which health conditions you live with. So if you have a physical disability, if you have a chronic illness, like you can be very specific about what it is. That could be Parkinson's or ADHD or autism or fibromyalgia. And there's thousands of health conditions in our database. And it's been amazing seeing all the different wonderful conditions that people have and looking at all the profiles and people, some people have added like dozens. And it's been really awesome to see that people are, not just, I'm not sure if celebrating is the right word, but celebrating, all these parts of their identity that usually is such negative, but we're trying to turn it into something positive and actually say, like, let's take it out of the darkness and out of the shadows and let's just embrace it. And it's okay. It's okay to be sick. It's okay to be disabled. And actually that kind of makes you awesome.
It is awesome. I'd like to see more out there for it to go. That's amazing. Great job, So we'll go back over to you, Nick. Discuss strategies for handling potential, I guess, rejection or misunderstandings.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's actually something that we've seen since we launched Match just a few weeks ago. So we've had Match live for 2 weeks now. So Match is where we match you directly with people that we think you'll like. At the moment, we have about a 30% success rate. So what that means is that 30% of our users who have used Match so far have made a new friend. So obviously, with that comes there is an element of rejection, right? But I think when you put yourself out there, it can be a little bit scary, and you're not sure if you're going to make new connections or maybe get rejected. I think it's part of it, and I would my tip would be to just try and embrace it. But know that you're in a safe space, and I think the more you put yourself out there, actually the better the better chances you have, and also the more people understand who you are, the more you'll find that person or the people that will actually understand you, because everyone has there's someone out there that understands you, right? That understands your experiences and will love you for who you are. You just need to have enough. You just need to find them. And so we want to support you in finding that person. So take a leap of faith, I think, is my tip. There will be some rejection, but that's part of the thrill of making new friends and going on dates. Yeah,
it's a part of life. Now, thank you very much for that, Nick. Awesome. But anything you want to add?
Sorry, that was me, wasn't it? Again, Nick put it so well. I guess all that I would add to that is that's being able to explore all elements of humanity, and again, in our focus groups, and also when I work with families and with people and families, wanting to protect perennial child again, and it's like, no, everybody has the right to experience what I would say the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's like, and I think, like you said, Nick, it's a matter of looking, and then it just makes it all more enjoyable when you have that lovely moment. But I also think it's about having the opportunity to actually experience it, as awful as rejection can be, and then also have the opportunity to learn more about it, that you're not the only one. Others experience rejection. It's the same for all of us. So it's about how we support that and giving people avenues, again, to information about what that may mean.
Thank you for that, Hayley and Nick. Interesting. I'll move on to the next question. So, discuss how platforms like this app are challenging societal perceptions of disability and relationships. We'll go over to you, Nick.
This is a great question, because we really see ourselves as much more than an app. We see Spoonie as a movement that's challenging how society looks at neurodivergent, chronically ill, and disabled people. And we want to be a part of a movement that redefines that, and redefines what it means to be disabled in society in a really positive way. I think this community has been ignored by so many parts of society for so long, ignored and written off, and just sort of shunted aside. And we want to celebrate this community and bring it into the light and challenge what it means, to be disabled. Disabled people can have jobs, they can have careers, they can have relationships, they can have friendships, they can have families, they can fall in love, they can fall out of love, and these are all amazing things. And I'm so excited about the future of Spoonie, and so excited to be part of this movement. And I think you can see, like, a lot of these things are coming more into the broader public consciousness. Like we are talking more about, especially post-COVID, we are talking more about chronic illness and disability. We're more aware as a society. So I actually do think that we are trending in the right direction. There's a saying that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice, I think, and I do think that's right. Even if it can feel slightly apocalyptic at the moment, I do think that we are, broadly heading in the right direction.
I guess we're excited to see how things go. It's been. Thank you very much, Nick, for that. Hayley, do you have anything you want to add?
Just that I love Nick's positivity. I'm going to remember that. May feel apocalyptic right now, but we are traveling in the right direction. I couldn't agree more. I think just the fact that we're having this conversation, that's telling us how far we've moved. And I know from my perspective and our relationship with Spoonie and also where Melba sits, my frustration has always been, oh, yes, we talk about human rights, but only some. And that for me is just insane. And it's about, you can't talk about one without all of them. And that people are people, and looking beyond disability or illness, chronic illness, neurodivergence. So I think just the fact that we're sitting here chatting, I think that in itself is saying that we are challenging societal perceptions. The fact that we have more people who are actually coming up, reaching out to us. We're now actually talking about LGBTQI plus and disability actually in the same sentence. So even the broad range of relationships and what people may want, not want, how people see themselves, gender diversity. We're now seeing that also being talked about holistically rather than just being segregated. So I also like to feel positive and that we continue to challenge those perceptions.
No, awesome. Thank you for that, Hayley. So, next question. Explore the potential for increased visibility and normalization of disability in the dating world. Interesting. Over to you, Nick.
Yeah, it's similar to what I said before. It's just we want to be an agent for change, and I think I think the more that we see, our team is always really excited when we see, for example, celebrities come out and say, "Hey, I'm actually disabled, or I have a chronic illness." There's there was Solange Noel's recently. I think she said she lives with POTS, and it's been really debilitating for her. And so we think that they're really positive signals that the world is embracing disability more, and that people are feeling more comfortable to share those parts of themselves that otherwise they would have kept hidden. And it wasn't that long ago that if you were disabled, you would absolutely not tell your employer. You wouldn't tell your colleagues at work that you were. And now people are feeling like they're not only not only disclosing that to their employer, they're actually advocating for their own access needs and for the access needs of their colleagues. So I think these are all really positive signals that I think we're that the world, the visibility is increasing and it's been normalized. And I'm very excited about the future.
And Hayley.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And for wanting to call out the elephant in the room, but I'm going to NDIS, as much as we've seen a lot of challenges of how it's being executed and implemented, the fact that the NDIS was presented as an insurance scheme in itself and that it was now seen as something that can benefit the greater community in its purest philosophical form, let's talk about that. But I know, working in disability for a long time, if you talked about disability, people would just look at you with this blank face. Whereas at least now there's many more conversations. And even though it's in the papers, it gets on the front page, it may not be for good, but at least it's no longer relegated, as in anything to do with disability is no longer relegated to the back pages or to the weekender. You know, it's actually now considered front and center, even though it may be not great news, but at least it's being considered, it's part of who we are. So therefore that increased visibility normalizes disability in my mind, because it's now talked about, people know. And then that just then translates to every part of it, which then includes the dating world.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, Nick and Hayley. Highlight the importance of mainstream dating apps adopting inclusive features. Over to you, Nick.
Yeah, I think it's. I think there's so much more work that can be done in this area, and I would love to see the mainstream dating apps really embrace accessibility, a little bit more enthusiastically. Unfortunately, at the moment, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. We're seeing, for example, that a lot of accessibility teams in some of these companies are being let go right now, particularly a lot of the diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are certainly being disbanded. But we know that, when organizations embrace accessibility, everybody wins. And we know that when we prioritize accessibility, everybody wins. And there's so many examples around the world, things like the electric toothbrush that were developed for disabled people, but then they have much broader applications, and they just create a better experience for everybody. So, accessibility is it's the right thing to do, but it just makes everything better for everybody, and it's absolutely the direction we should be heading in.
It sure is. It sure is. Thank you for that, Nick. Any do you want to add?
The only thing I'd add to that is I just think accessibility should just be the standard. I'd love to, and I guess I'm being very idealistic, but I'd love to be able to see a world where we didn't even have to talk about accessibility. So for example, every doorway was accessible. Every app, every piece of technology was just accessible. And then it wouldn't just be about equality, it'd be about full equity for everyone. So I think I'd love to be able to say we're on our way, but to Nick's point, we're now seeing some of that be shut down globally, and it makes no sense. It makes no sense. I mean, even if you want to get really cold and callous, it's a commercial reality as well. There's been so much research that when you're accessible, when you're diverse, you're truly representative of the people around you. So therefore, you're always going to do better. We'll hope.
That's the magic word. The hype. It's all about hype. Okay, Nick, and thank you, Hayley. So, my question now. We'll go over to you, Hayley. Actually, discuss the role of advocacy in promoting broader accessibility and acceptance.
Yeah, well, I think that probably covers off everything we've talked about today, and I guess, to thank you guys, because that's exactly what this is doing as well. It's actually advocating. I mean, the whole conversation today has really been about advocacy. I mean, I'll use every avenue, every network I possibly can about promoting broader accessibility and acceptance. Like I said before, it should be a no-brainer. Like everything should just be accessible. Every building, every house, every app, everything should just be accessible. Then we wouldn't even have to have this conversation. So, congratulations to you both, because I think this just then amplifies what I guess fabulous people like Nick and Nick is doing around the development of Spoonie and being able to work with us in partnership to be able to continue to advocate for that broader accessibility.
Thank you for anything you want to add, Nick?
I need to add, echo Hayley's words. Advocacy, is vital to getting to creating change and to achieving outcomes. And advocates take on a lot of work, and it's hard work, and it's often can be difficult. And massive congratulations to the both of you for doing the amazing work that you both do. And to all the advocates that have come before, in generations before us, like we all sort of stand on their shoulders. And I think, a lot of these things can take time, and it's a slow, it can be a slow journey. And that's why we're really excited to be partnering with Melba. Where Spoonie is we're only a really, really young organisation, but Melba has been working in this space for 30 years, and they have a really strong history of advocacy, and a really, really deep, and that's all informed by a really, really deep understanding of the community that they're serving. And that's why we were really excited to work with Melba.
Awesome. Interesting, and continue the great work that you're doing. Because at the end of the day, it's all about inclusion and accessibility for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to acknowledge that you guys are doing awesome work. Keep up the great work. Move on to the next question. Discuss the role of. Sorry, Jonathan. Go ahead.
Do you have any final thoughts?
Nick, do you want to go first?
You can go first, Hayley, if you like.
Sorry, Jonathan. Did I cut you off? Do we have any final thoughts?
Yes.
I am going to share probably one final thought that it's always been such a mad frustration of mine. And I know we say it takes time and we stand on the shoulders of our advocates before us. I guess I'm at the point that, you just want to rattle some cages. I just want to sometimes shout from the rooftops. Unfortunately or fortunately, I've been working alongside people with a disability probably way too long. And I can remember back in the 80s having some of these conversations about intimacy and exploring dating and relationships. And I just want to get a bloody move on, it's like, and so when we get to partner with great people like Spoonie, and when people like yourself are really interested, it's like fantastic, because you want to stop just banging on about it and talking about it, and want to see it come to fruition and see the huge benefit that it has, not just for people with a disability, neurodivergent or chronic health needs, but for the whole of society. This is about the benefit to everyone. And especially right now, I feel where we've become a little bit more polarized. I'll get off my soapbox now and hand over to you, Nick.
That's great. My final thoughts would be, just to reiterate my congratulations to the two of you. I think telling stories is so important, and it reminds us all that we're not alone. Telling stories brings people together, it builds community, and that's what you guys are doing with your podcast. I had one more thing I was going to say, and it's just escaped my mind. I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
Thank you again for having us on. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Nick and Hayley, for your kind words. I very much appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you both on the show and, promote Sweeney. And we wish nothing but success and growth. And we'll spread the word around. We'll surely do that. I think more people would still need to get out there, especially in the dating world. And we need to make this world more inclusive and more accessible for everyone,
Mm.
from every walk of life. Uh, Thank you for that. Jonathan, do you have anything you want to add?
Does everyone try it out? Get on Spoon.
That's it. You heard it here, Srini. Well, from our phone line. Thank you both.
I
Sorry, go
remember,
on.
I remember what I was going to say, which is that this community is actually huge, and we shouldn't forget that.
Yep.
Like the disabled community is huge. It's like according to WHO, it's the world's biggest minority group. So bringing this community together is really vital, and sticking together and building that is just really important. Because when we work together, we're really powerful.
Absolutely. Achieve everything.
Exactly. You heard it from Nick and Hayley themselves. For everyone out there, thank you very much. You've been watching CripChat, your weekly podcast on everything disability.